What's up, everybody, and welcome back from the dead. Blue Turnip's bad podcast about good music. My name's Kyle.
My name is Brian.
And we are so psyched to be here after an accidentally long hiatus from our bad podcast about good music, where if you've been listening to any of our previous episodes, you know that we've been talking about our top 5 albums from every year, starting at 2000 and working our way up to 2021. And today we're talking about 2010.
Yeah, man. And I'm excited about it for I guess this is our halfway point, sort of. We kind of talked about that last time. But I don't know if it's because stuff holds up better from this point forward, but I think my list just keeps getting stronger as we go. So
nice.
Let's do it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, this is an interesting year for me. There's a couple albums on here that are new to me that I just found this year that I really liked, both of them, and they made my top 5. So lots of different styles and music going on today.
Style boys for life.
Style boys. I was just talking, it was really funny. I was just talking about the Lonely Island with one of my students last week, and because we were talking about colons and semicolons, and he had never sometimes I mentioned that song by the Lonely Island where they do all the semicolons wrong.
Yeah, it's a great
and he was like, I haven't thought about the Lonely Island since I was a kid, and I was like, oh yeah, I was like, I guess they were really popular when I was in high school, kind of, but
the last thing they did was the Bash Brothers Experience,
which was
amazing. That didn't work so good for me. Did you like it?
I don't know if I'll I watched it and I wasn't like, that was hilarious, but I was like, I appreciated how incredibly unique and funny it was to do that, to be like, let's make a musical about Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire.
Yeah, it is ridiculous.
And just a totally fictional, all completely, it's just really, really a funny concept. It's funny that it even got made at all.
That's true.
But anyways, off track already. All right, that's how you know it's going to be a good podcast day. So if it's your first time listening, first of all, welcome. Brian and I are 2/3 of the rock band Blue Turnip. And we always like to plug, you can find our EP Songs from the Cellar anywhere where music can be found. And hopefully, possibly later this year, or maybe early 2022, we're going to be able to get into the studio and record another few songs. I know I'm going to be moving about 2.5 hours closer to you guys.
Excited.
Very, very soon. And so hopefully we'll be able to get together more and get into that studio and record some more singles.
Oh yeah, people can't wait. We gotta give the people what they want, man. They've been waiting for years.
I get handwritten notes in my mailbox every day. 2 to 3 notes. When's the next song?
That's hilarious.
Well, sweet. And sorry, if you've never listened to us before we get into the top 5 countdown, we always like to do a little segment. And sometimes we talk about our music. Sometimes we talk about little themes and things and questions that we have going on for the day. Today, we are continuing sort of a broken up series that we've been doing where we do Blue Turnip song breakdowns. It's been a few episodes since we've done one of these. And today we are talking about the 4th song on our EP, Songs from the Cellar. And this song is called What Do You Want From Me?
Yeah. And this is actually the first song that we recorded. Way before we did the rest of the EP. And the reason is because we recorded it for somebody to use on a compilation album, just from artists that they knew, and they were gonna make it their own and add to it and stuff. But we finished recording it and we really liked the way it sounded, so we decided yo, let's release this as it is. Screw the remix.
And if I remember correctly, the compilation never ended up getting made, right?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, I don't think it even ended up getting put out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's different. So it was our very first song, and it's super different from the other songs in the EP because it was for a compilation of kind of folk / bluegrass slash Irish like music like that, and so like it's kind of the one acoustic song on our EP that's maybe a little bit more in the folk rock half of the genre.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's the only song in the EP where there's not drums either. You play cajon and some
The
other percussion on
cajon.
this one.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that you said that. We've got a lot of stuff in the bank. They're like, we need a folk song. We're like, oh, we got one of those. We've got one of everything.
Yeah,
Always
yeah.
ready.
Maybe one day we'll get to record. I've got a country song about Tom Selleck's mustache that I wrote back like 10 years ago. I'd love to record that one day.
Dude, I haven't heard it, but I've seen the title. It's hilarious.
But yeah, this was one. Gosh, Andy played acoustic guitar. He did 2 acoustic guitar layers.
Mhm.
I played the bass, and I'm not super comfortable on the bass. He really asked me like, "Hey, can you come up with the bass line?" And I came up with this bass line, and he was like, "I don't like that. That's not good." And I was like, "Well, you come up with the one." and so he came up with one that was really good, and I just kind of like learned how to play the bass line that he came up with. And the our engineer Ricky Rodriguez at Bombhouse Studios, I think the bass sounds really really good on this song, like not in terms of my playing but just in terms of like the way that he made the bass sound. It's like it
Mm.
really fills out the bottom, especially without there being drums and it being a little bit thinner layer than some of our
Yeah.
other tracks. And yeah.
One of my favorite parts of the EP is in this song, and it's the ooh ooh ah ah bridge where the
Yeah.
keyboard layers in there. That was really nice. And another shout out to Ricky Rod
Yep.
because it just sounds really cool.
And the keyboard was actually totally his idea.
Yeah, it's
Because
angelic.
yeah, he was like, I think an organ would work really nice here. And we were kind of like, really? And then it was
And they were
like,
like,
yeah, it
yeah.
was totally right.
Yeah.
And speaking of those background vocals, this is the only track on the EP where our sister Paige sang
Hmm.
so she sang one of those ooh ah parts back there.
Yeah, because she's listed in our album notes, our EP notes as
Yeah.
Paige the Rage.
What she asked for. She didn't used to like that nickname, but then when we
Yeah.
put her in there, she was like, "Will you list me as Paige the Rage?" We were like, "Okay."
It's because we used to Paige the Rage came from youth group volleyball. When she would like spike the ball or something, or like get mad. Page the Rage, Page the Rage.
Yeah, siblings are funny.
Yeah.
Paige is doing. I got to finally go. She just moved recently,
Yeah.
and I finally got to go visit her at her new house last month, and yeah, it was great to see her and see that. Yeah, her new spot and everything. I'm sure the listeners are super interested in that little anecdote.
Yeah. I agree. That was a nice little house.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
good spot.
Yeah.
Let's see what else about this one. Andy, right before we went into the studio, he decided to change one of the lyrics. I think it was a lyric in, it was either the end of the first verse or the end of the second verse. He had something about like an hourglass or a glass of time, and he ended up cutting it out and putting something else in there instead.
It was
And
a little too psychedelic.
yeah, we'd been playing this song for a couple of years, and I sang it wrong. I remember the first like time or two that I laid down a vocal track, and they were like, "You sang the wrong words." I was like, "Shut up!"
Dude, that happened with Float too.
Yeah,
We'll
he
talk
did.
about
He
that
also,
one.
yeah, we also
We'll talk
changed.
about that one at a later date, but you
Yeah.
messed up the words on that one like many times in a row. We're all just like,
I'm so like I don't know when it happened. At some point in my life, I like sing with my eyes closed most of the time, especially when I'm in the studio. I get like super focused and just like try and like make sure everything's perfect and just right. And then like as soon as the song's done, I like kind of come out of that. I'm like, yeah, I know I freaking messed up like all the words or whatever. But
hilarious.
yeah.
It was a really fun song to record though, and it's probably our most like raw sounding song because we didn't go into it with like the mindset of making it like a perfect studio song. It's
Mm.
kind of quick and dirty. But I think it really works for that style of song. You'll hear some imperfections every now and then, but It's a really good like acoustic live sound. So it was a fun change up on the EP, I thought.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it actually, this was the first, like you said, first acoustic song we'd ever recorded, because we've been to the studio a couple times before, but we'd never done anything like this. And as I've gone back and listened to other more acoustic guitar based music, those imperfections are pretty much in almost every acoustic guitar driven song. It's like,
Mhm.
just kind of by the nature of the instrument, it's like,
Yeah, like the squeaks and
yeah.
yeah,
It's so
all
I
that
felt a
stuff.
lot better about that after I started noticing that in other songs, of like, I was, because when we were listening to it, we were kind of like, oh, I wish we had noticed and fixed some of that stuff. And then I was like, oh, it's kind of impossible to fix some of that stuff. It's just like, that's how the acoustic guitar is. That's how it works.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, like for people who are like really interested in some of the stuff that you can hear like some nose whistle breathing at the beginning of the song. It's
yeah, that's what
hilarious.
you get when you just sit somebody down in a room with a microphone. And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But like Ricky said, it's like if you're going to record an acoustic guitar, like you may as well, like acoustic electric, if you're going to plug it in, it just loses so much character and tone. And
Yeah, it's true.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, good times, good
yeah,
times.
great tune. It's
And
also
that
it's
that
also our most popular song. It's the one that has been downloaded and bought the most, and the one that we get the most feedback on. So I guess we should do more like that. I don't know.
yeah. And it kind of got us pumped to do more.
Mm,
So it's got a special place for sure. We're like, wow, that was really fun. Let's do it again.
yeah.
And then yeah, and then that's what happened. We did more.
Yeah.
And 4 years later, we might do another song. I
Yeah, we
don't
might do another EP. It is
know.
funny. I know we because like that first song, like you said, it was so stripped and easy in comparison to the other four. Um, I guess Float, which we haven't talked about yet, was probably the second easiest, because that's kind of a jam
Yeah.
song. But I think we also had an inflated sense of how good we were at being in the studio, because there were some sessions after that where we had to go back and redo some stuff,
Yeah.
and we went in a little unprepared one day. And but it was a great learning
Oh, for sure.
process. And I don't want to
Yeah.
make it seem like the EP didn't come out good, because it came out great.
Oh, yeah.
um
Yeah.
all
It's
five of
good
the
quality.
songs are really really good. So yeah, and huge shout out again to Ricky Rodriguez at Baumhouse Studios. If you're looking for a studio on the western half of North Carolina, can't be beat. He's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, and I want to mention too, speaking about how awesome we are. Well, for people who don't know, we were on the radio a couple of weeks ago for a local station, 91.7 WSGE, for their 91 Seconds of Fame, where they played 91 seconds of local artist songs. And people voted on which one they liked the best. I think there ended up being 11 or 12 artists, and we came in third.
Hey,
So we did all right.
yeah. I didn't see
But
those final results, so third place, that's pretty awesome.
yeah, and I was thinking, I thought of that because you're talking about like Spotify sales or whatever. For What Do You Want From Me? I was curious to see if like the radio got us any traction. And I pulled up my Spotify. I have like the artist page, and it said one person currently listening. And I was like, dude.
Yes.
I was like, we got one. That was the first time I'd ever seen like currently listening.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we gained one fan potentially. So that was worth it.
Nice. Yeah, dude, that was great on you, because you submitted your song "A Lack of Sleep," I'd say.
Yeah.
Which the DJ said wrong. He said it a little bit wrong. I can't remember what he said.
Yeah, he said I see.
Yeah.
Just it was kind of funny. A lack of sleep, I see.
Yeah, that was fun. And the other band they played, the Mood Kings, that was a great song. And
Yeah, it's good.
we connected with those guys online a little bit, and they seem really nice. So
Yeah, they ended up taking the prize.
all right, good for them.
So we went up head to head against them. We lost to the best. So
Well, there you go.
yeah. Anyways, yeah, it was fun.
Sweet. All right, good times. Good Blue Turnip discussion there. Everyone, all our hardcore fans will love that.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, before we dive into our top five, I always rattle off a few honorable mentions. So I've got 5 honorable mentions from 2010, but I'm only going to talk about 4 of them, because one of them is on Brian's list, which usually happens to us. That usually 1 or 2 is on Brian's list. This is the one, this first one, this is the one that was closest to making my countdown. It was in the number 5 slot and it got booted like kind of last minute. Suburba by House of Heroes. I had House of Heroes' first album was on my countdown a handful of episodes ago. This is their third record. Pretty significant change in sound they undergo with each release, and this one is like kind of more of a classic rock sound in a lot of ways, but they also have a couple folkier songs on here, and they've got one that almost sounds like a little bit of like southern rock, like Tom Petty-ish influence, but yeah, really cool album, kind of a semi-concept album of being like lower middle class in the suburbs and kind of like how you live your life if you're like working part-time at minimum wage jobs and stuff like that. But yeah, really good album from House of Heroes there. Jukebox the Ghosts, their sophomore release, Everything Under the Sun. I talked about their number one or their first album, Let Live and Let Ghost, was my number one album 2 episodes ago. It's probably one of my top 5 favorite albums of all time. And Everything Under the Sun, this second one's a good one. It's kind of like, you know, sometimes when bands come out with the second album, it's sort of like their first album, but like not quite as good. And that's pretty much what this is. It's kind of like their first album, but not quite as good. And there's some really great music on here. Yeah, solid honorable mention.
Nice.
Take a Vacation by the Young Veins. This is one that I talked a couple episodes ago about, the Panic at the Disco album, Pretty Odd. And I talked a little bit about the history of that and how that album actually ended up splitting the band in 2. And half of the band went and stayed Panic at the Disco and went back to that kind of pop sound. And the other half formed this band, the Young Veins, and went like way back in time. This is basically like an early 60s rock and roll record that they just recorded in 2009, 2010, and put out. And unfortunately, it didn't get that much traction, and it sort of ended up spelling out to the end of their music careers, more or less. But it's a really fun kind of novelty rock and roll album if you're looking for something that has that early 60s sound, but are some songs that you've never heard before. Yeah, it's a great listen.
Sweet.
And number 4, You Get What You Give by the Zac Brown Band. Zac Brown, he's an interesting artist because when he goes like full-blown country, that's like not quite what I'm looking for, but he gets really unique, and he has kind of that island flair, that sort of Jimmy Buffett but better, that he does sometimes. He gets kind of funky sometimes, definitely some big time rock influence, and his band is so talented, so you get some really great instrumental work in there, and awesome background vocals, and he writes some really catchy songs with some really fun lyrics. And You Get What You Give is probably my favorite Zac Brown Band album, maybe top 2 depending on Uncaged and that stuff. But
I like Zac Brown a lot. I always think of something hilarious because we grew up in a town where everybody loves country music, and one of my friends is like a huge country fan, like mainstream, like top 40 radio country. Top 40 radio country. And I remember one time I was like, I don't really like country. I was like, but I kind of like Zac Brown. He's like, Zac Brown freaking sucks. He's like, that ain't country. I'm like, yeah, that's probably why I like it.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Oh, that was really funny. Hated Zac Brown. Like, he thought it was like a disgrace that he was on the country radio. There's a couple guys like that. Like Chris Stapleton's another one who gets played on mainstream country.
Yeah,
he's freaking
cool.
awesome.
He's cool.
Sturgill Simpson is another good one. So there's good country artists out there for sure. But Zac Brown probably the best.
Nice. Yeah, those are good. Those are 3 good ones. Especially for Chris Stapleton. That's an artist that I just heard of this year. Somehow I'd like dodged and stuff. But there's a radio station.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, there's a radio station in Wilmington called The Penguin, and they play lots of like Americana stuff, and they put on a lot of concerts around town, and they play Chris Stapleton a lot, and I started listening to them this year, and yeah, he's cool songs.
Yeah, for sure.
And I will not mention my fifth honorable mention, as I mentioned, because it is number 3 on your list for this year. We
That's
didn't talk
right.
about who wants to go first, but you want to go first? You want to do your number 5?
Yeah, I'll go first.
All right, sweet.
May or may not have had to look up the pronunciation of this word before we started. It's the album Transference by Spoon. Did I say it right?
I think so. Yeah,
Transference.
transference. Yeah.
Transference by Spoon. This was one of my favorite Spoon albums. I think it's one of the first ones I'd ever heard. So I'm guessing this year was the first I'd ever heard about them. Because I remember their song "Written in Reverse" was being played on local radio a lot, and it's so sick. It's just like it basically sounds like somebody like punching a piano, which is really cool. And they do a lot of stuff like that, like punching pianos and like super distorted guitars and stuff. And they just have such a great sound. And we've talked about it before that when you hear Spoon, you know it's Spoon. And again, this is another album that keeps that trend going for sure. But Before Destruction, the opening track, is kind of a interesting structure on that one. It's kind of like a reverse build. It starts fully and then it kind of keeps breaking down layer by layer by layer, which is something you don't hear a lot. So it's yeah, it catches your ear when you listen to it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But it's got a lot of good jams on it. I think I like pretty much every song. The Mystery Zone's classic. That one's kind of like psychedelic and weird. I Saw the Light's a great one. But yeah, man. As usual, a good rock album. Love his vocals. Love the guitar work. They just have that signature sound every time. And yeah, I think this is one of their best for sure.
Nice. Yeah, no, we've talked about Spoon a couple times before. Is there anything about this album, any song or any like aspect of it that says like, oh yeah, this kind of stands out from other Spoon albums because of blank?
We had talked about in the past how kind of their albums, a lot of songs sound similar throughout. Um, I think this one does a better job, like distinguishing from track to track, unique flavors in each one. So yeah, I think that's a big selling point for me on this one is that it's easier to listen to as a whole,
Nice.
whereas some of the other earlier ones might be more pick and choose for me. But yeah, I definitely like to listen to this one all the way through.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet. That's awesome, man. Yeah. This is and this is the first album where I kind of stopped keeping track of Spoon. So I'm interested to go and hear the songs that are on our Spotify playlist, which speaking of, every episode that we make, we take selections from our top 5 and curate a Spotify playlist. We always put the link in the description to the video. And if you're not a Spotify person, we usually make a YouTube playlist of that as well, which you can find in the info card up in the top corner of this video as well. So yeah, if you hear anything that you want to revisit that you haven't heard in 10 years, or if there's something you haven't heard before that you want to check out the Spotify playlist. It's good times.
Heck yeah. I also want to say Spoon, like I kind of already said it, but they're so consistent and they're still kicking out albums today. And like I kind of lost track of them too, like you were saying, more recently. And I went back to one of their more recent albums. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, they're just so consistently good. So
That's tight.
respect. Yeah.
Yeah, good for them. Punching pianos for 15 years.
Yeah.
That's sweet. All right, I'll hit my number 5. This is one I know, Brian, when I sent you because I had my top 5 from like 2000 to 2006 done like right away. And then I was sending them to you like year after year as I was finishing them. And I remember when I sent you 2010, you saw my number 5 and you were like, I'm really surprised that you put this on your list. And this is Anti-Fogmatic by Punch Brothers. And Punch Brothers is a band that I'd heard of. You mentioned WSGE and WNCW were 2 radio stations that we listened to a lot. And you might still listen to them a lot because you're still over there in that area. But this is a band that was kind of played on those stations sometimes. And it was always kind of like you'd hear a song and be like, yeah, cool. Like whatever, Punch Brothers. Oh, and I went back and listened to this album. And first of all, I was totally intrigued by the album cover because I'm such a prog rock guy. And I was like, that is such a prog rock album cover. That like weird science fiction machine, like in the middle of the wilderness. It's like, that's amazing. And it is like, it's pretty avant-garde stuff sometimes. Like I was telling my wife, it's like, somewhere between on the spectrum between like Bela Bartok, the modern classical composer, and bluegrass music. It's like somewhere in there is where the Punch Brothers live.
Yeah.
And some songs are really on that avant-garde end, and there's some songs like Rye Whiskey that are just like straight up reeling bluegrass tunes. I probably like the B side of this album a lot. From like track 6 through 10 is where it really takes off for me. But yeah, I think even the 3 songs that I put in the playlist, I put Missy, Next to the Trash, and Welcome Home. And I think that kind of shows off the diversity of what they're able to do. They only use traditional bluegrass instruments. There's pretty much no percussion on this album, except for, the instruments like the mandolin that are a little bit more percussive or something like that. But they're able to do a lot in the space of those instruments, and just a really cool vision, really cool sound, where they're all very talented, but nobody's necessarily trying to just like show off, or it's like very well crafted and put together. Yeah, Anti-Fogmatic by Punch Brothers. It's tight.
Yeah, dude, they're crazy talented. I actually got to see them at Bonnaroo in 2013, and I realized how good they were when I saw them. Because like I don't like bluegrass, but they're not like your stereotypical bluegrass band, like you were saying. They're not doing like the classic banjo, like in like they don't do stuff like that. Like they know what they're doing, and they write really good songs. So yeah, super talented band.
Yeah.
And they do a really cool version of Kid A by Radiohead.
The whole album or just the
No,
song?
just the song.
Oh,
Just the
okay,
song.
okay.
Yeah. And that's such a weird Radiohead song. Like nobody would ever cover it, and they covered it, and they freaking nail it. I always
Nice.
really like that one.
I
So
was
yeah, they're cool.
I was thinking of you the other day because I saw that Bonnaroo got rained out this
Dude, I
past
know.
weekend. I was like,
Yeah,
man.
that sucks. They
Yeah.
canceled it like the day before, and people would drive from like all over the world. I was like looking at the comments on Facebook. Some dude's like, I just drove all the way from Colorado,
Oh man.
but they showed pictures of the place, and it was just like a swamp.
Jeez.
Yeah,
Ugh.
that hurricane messed up a lot of things,
Yeah.
but
Well, I
yeah,
know
that's
you
2
and I.
years in a row too. They had to cancel.
Oh,
So
seriously? Wow,
yeah,
man.
because the virus got him last year,
Jeez.
so they might be in trouble.
Yeah, Curse Festival, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, before we slide on to your number 4, we'll just say you and I are both from Boone, and Boone, North Carolina is like a bluegrass hub.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's either of our favorite genre of music, but at the same time, I think it's part of like our growing up experience, and we heard so much of it, and I'll always kind of have
Yeah.
a soft spot for it. And I really like bands like Punch Brothers and like Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, especially, who like very obviously grew up in that tradition, and kind of take it to the next level or do something a little beyond what you usually hear with it. And I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of good bluegrass if you dig deep enough. I just have a hard time listening to it in heavy doses.
Yeah, if you hear too much of it in a row, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's better than country though.
Yeah, for sure.
All right,
man, hit us with your number 4.
Yeah, man. Nightmare by Avenged Sevenfold. It's your effing nightmare. I love this album. This one, Avenged Sevenfold had like their peak years for me. It was City of Evil through Nightmare, and this is like, I thought this was like their last really great album. And this one is it's emotional because the Rev died during the recording of this album. Their drummer, one of my favorite drummers of all time. So it kind of pays tribute to the Rev, which is really cool. And the album cover There's like a little headstone that says forever, and the REV in forever is capitalized for Rev.
Nice.
It's a really creepy album cover. It's kind of like very horror oriented. There's like their skull logo looking over a little girl laying down by a grave site, so it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
But that sets the tone for the album. But the Mike Portnoy took over drums on this one because the Rev said that he was his favorite drummer. So Avenged Sevenfold asked him if he wanted to play drums on it, and he said, "Heck yeah, I'll do it." And the drums are freaking awesome.
Nice.
The Rev does play. He shows up on a handful of songs, and he sings a few songs that he wrote. Fiction was the last song that he wrote, and his vocals are on it. It's kind of tough to listen to, like, because it was like his like scratch vocal or whatever, just like when he was demoing the song and they kind of finished it for him. But they used his vocal in it, which is really cool. And like he was messed up on drugs and stuff, and you can kind of hear it in his voice. So yeah, it's an emotional album, but it's really good. And they kind of went back to their heavier side for this one. There's a lot of really intense metal, a lot of screams that they kind of got away from on their self-titled one. But so many good songs. Welcome to the Family was one of their singles, and that's one of my favorite Avenged Sevenfold songs like ever. It starts with a nasty drum solo, and it just turns into a super catchy song, and it's got this heavy metal breakdown that just like blows your face up, dude. Like I listen to that song so much, and I always crank it like way too loud to the point where like my ears are ringing. Like when it gets to the heavy metal breakdown part, it's got like, I'm a sucker for like the double bass and like the down tuned guitars together, just like so there's a lot of like big time head banging on this one. Yeah, dude, but it's a really good album. It's a little long. It's over an hour long. I think they could have trimmed it a little bit. But I think it's definitely got some of their best songs on it. And just like I said, the fact that it pays tribute to the Rev is kind of a big deal for me, just because I respect him so much as a drummer. A lot of times heavy metal drummers kind of have similar styles, and I feel like he always stood out from everybody. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, man. I know one thing people don't think about a lot is how hard metal drumming is on your body.
Dude, no joke.
Especially like, somebody like him who was always pushing the limit and doing as much as he could do. Not that that's an excuse for, the drugs or some of the things that he got in trouble, that sent him down a bad path. But like, you can understand how you might end up doing some stuff like that, with how popular Avenged Sevenfold is and how often they were touring and just like the high energy and the constant stress that he was putting on himself.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, just such a talented dude. And Mike Portnoy, obviously super, super talented as well. We've talked about him on the podcast before.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite drummers and plays with Neil Morse all the time, which I always enjoy. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they chose like the next best guy for the job, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, man, great stuff, great album. I love heavy metal, and I've said it before, but Avenged Sevenfold to me is the best heavy metal band there is. So
nice,
big fan. Yeah,
awesome, man, good stuff. Well, let's see. I know sometimes we talk about metal back to back, but this is not metal. My number 4 from 2010, I've got "Love Is Here to Stay" by Casey Shea is the artist. Both my number 5 and number 4, these are albums that I discovered this year. One I discovered earlier in the year, just kind of by accident, and the Punch Brothers I found when I was listening to music from 2010 and trying to figure out stuff for my countdown, and I was like, wow, this is really good. But Casey Shea, I've talked about the band Tally Hall on the podcast before, and they're one of my favorite groups. And Casey Shea was like a substitute touring member for them. They had Tally Hall has a member who dealt with some struggles with mental health, and sometimes he wouldn't be able to make it on certain tour dates, and this guy Casey Shea was one of their fill-ins. and I think he has 3 albums. I could be wrong about that. He might have more. But Love Is Here to Stay. This is his second album, and it's a super influence heavy album, but it's influence heavy on purpose. So like sometimes people like their influences get in there and you're just like, oh, this sounds just like blah blah blah.
Right.
So he's very clearly trying to do like a John Lennon type thing. Even the album cover, like it looks like a John Lennon album cover. He kind of looks like John Lennon a little bit in the face, and like they very much play that up. And
Yeah.
but also like you can hear some big time George Harrison influence as well, especially like his solo stuff after the Beatles. And the more modern day, you hear the big time Coldplay influence, a little bit of like Radiohead. I know Radiohead and Coldplay, they kind of mush together a little bit in some of their stuff. But yeah, it's a really nice song, and the album creates such a good mood and such a good space. Most of the songs flow together, and it's a pretty short album. I think it's only like 38 or 39 minutes, something like that. And it just kind of flows, and it's really easy and fun to listen to. There's some good variety. The first song, Something Good, is like really upbeat, kind of peppy 60s, 70s style pop song. And then number 2, Good Man, is probably my favorite song on the album. It's like a Coldplay style waltz that's about like he's sort of having memories of his dead mom, and she was very Christian, and he's kind of wrestling with like if she would think that he's a good man or not. And really very powerful song. And yeah, and then the last 2, I think I put both of them on the playlist. Roll Your Windows Down, kind of like an ethereal, like lots of vocal harmonies, and then Love Is Here to Stay. It ends with like a big John Lennon style kind of anthem-y type song. Yeah, just I'm really glad I found this one this year. I've listened to it probably about 10, 12 times since I discovered it, probably back in like February, March. And yeah, just like it more and more the more I listen to it, and it's very fun and singable and great production, awesome sound they had going on, and yeah, really good.
I failed you on this one because you told me to listen to the album. I didn't, sorry, but I remember you sent me the song that you said remind you of a Coldplay song, and it definitely did. And like Coldplay, Beatles, and Radiohead you mentioned, that's like the perfect recipe for me. So I'll listen to it, I promise.
You're good. I'd be interested.
This time I will.
I'd be interested to hear what you think of it, because I know sometimes like if you're a really big Coldplay fan, you might not necessarily like somebody that's like playing off of that sound as much as you like that sound itself.
Yeah.
Because like I have artists like that for sure, but like he to me is like he takes those Coldplay elements and mixes them with other things, and I really like that. But I can see how somebody who's really into Coldplay might be like, this is just a copycat but worse.
Rip off.
But yeah, I love it. I think it's really, really awesome.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. Sweet. Deep tracks. I like it.
I mean,
all right. Number 3, Town, American Ghetto by Portugal the Man. Portugal the Man's been popping up on my list a lot lately because they went through a stretch where they put out like an album every year, which was sweet. Let's see. I had them the last 2 years before this. And spoilies, I might be having them come up pretty soon again after this. But Portugal the Man, dude, I've talked about them several times now, but they changed their sound so much from album to album, but still enough Portugal the Man, like to where it's not like ridiculous that they're changing their sound. They definitely keep to their roots. But American Ghetto is super different from anything they had done up to this point. This one grew on me. I wasn't a big fan of it at first, to be honest, just because I think it caught me off guard when I heard it. There's a lot of like electronic drums and a lot of like synth stuff and kind of like spacey sounding stuff, a lot of hip hop elements you hear. But I think the thing, like every individual song isn't my favorite, but as a whole, this album works so good. It's just like a vibe. It's just got like such a good feel to it. Just kind of like gets you entranced and you're just in the groove, man. But the whole thing just like vibes right along. I love it. Yeah, super cohesive album. The Dead Dogs, the opening track, that's one of my favorites.
Mm.
All My People, such a great song. Fantastic Pace, that's a great one. Do What We Do. There's just like a weird like bass line and like some percussion, and they just keep saying we don't need you to do what we do like over and over again. But it's just like it's just got that sweet groove to it. You're just
Mm.
like, like it's a good album to like listen to in your car and just like get in the zone, like run through all the red lights. But one of my favorite songs is the very last one, When the War Ends. Uh that like I know I've said vibe so many times, but dude, just like pure joy when you listen to that song. It's just so happy. Like I don't know if I would call it like disco, but it's definitely got that kind of a sound to it.
Mm.
But I love Portugal the Man, and I love that they take risks and they don't care like what they do. And they released American Ghetto, and yeah, it really really grew on me enough so to make it my third favorite album of 2010.
Nice. Yeah, dude, this is the honorable mention that I didn't mention before, and you said everything that I think makes this album great. And I don't think you overused the word vibe, because this might be the most vibing album ever.
Yeah,
Um,
dude, it is.
yeah, I used to we used to have an elliptical in our living room at our old apartment, and there was a stretch for like a whole month one summer where every single time I got on the elliptical, I would put that album on. And like you said, you just like get in, it almost like puts you in like a head state, and you
Yeah,
just
it's
like keep
crazy.
moving and keep grooving. And my favorites are the first one and the last one, Dead Dog and When the War Ends, are
Yeah.
such great songs. But yeah, great, cool album. Cool album.
Yeah, and I mentioned like the hip hop thing. Like if it sounds like people like it sounds like a rapper could rap over the beats.
Mm,
So I think that's kind of what makes it interesting is like there's no rap. There's like melodies and stuff. So yeah, it's very unique. It definitely stands alone um amongst their albums and just like everything. It's just super different.
yeah.
Yeah. Boom.
Nice, man. Love it. We are
Heck
rolling
yeah.
today, man. We got good music going on today.
Yeah, this is fun.
I've got one here. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I'd be willing to bet that this is probably an honorable mention for you for 2010. Beautiful Things by Gunger.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
this is
great.
the first. It's not the first release that Michael Gunger ever did, because he had some worship stuff before this that was mostly covers. But it's the first of like the bands, the group Gunger, and they like smashed out of
Mm.
the gates with this one. In my opinion, I think, not that, I think they have 4 albums after this, and not that those 4 after this are bad, but this one to me is like the culmination of what he was going for, of like that idea of like, oh, so much Christian music sounds the same, we should make Christian music that does not sound the same. And you hear that in almost like every track being a different style, um, where it's like you have some of the like kind of Sufjan Stevens inspired sort of semi-classical, ethereal, psychedelic, but there's also some bluesy stuff, and there's also some really funky and jamming stuff. There's some more straightforward worship tunes. It's really really well done. And Yeah, awesome album cover art as well.
Yeah, it's
The
cool.
flowers on the hill, but made out of all of like the war symbolism. Like the flowers are made out of like bombs and skulls and airplanes and stuff like that. And it's, yeah, very very cool image. But yeah.
Yeah, man. The talk about talent. These guys are insane. And I think the only reason it'd be an honorable mention for me is like it drags for me a little bit. This album does. It
Mm-hmm.
kind of like slows down, like maybe halfway through, or maybe it's like the last third kind of slows down for me. But this one, I liked this album, and I liked Ghost Upon the Earth was the one after this. I think that was my favorite. But this one has some of their best songs ever. I think like the title track, obviously Heaven, that like blues jam.
Yeah, with Israel Houghton. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. and Call Me Out is one of my favorites. I always thought that kind of sounded like a Muse song in a way.
Yeah, it kind of does. Yeah, you're right. And I think I put that one on the playlist if I'm remembering correctly. That one's awesome.
Yeah, you did. I can see that it's down that's on there.
I can see
But
what you're
there,
I can see what you're talking about too. Like I'm looking at the tracks here, 9 through 13. There's only one upbeat song
yeah,
in that run. I just happen to really, really like three of those, Please Be My Strength, Higher, and We Will Run. They all are pretty similar in that kind of ethereal, pretty slow paced. But all three of those really do it for me. So it doesn't feel as much like it drags to me in the back third, but I
yeah.
can completely understand. Yeah, thinking that
Oh,
for
no
sure.
disrespect at all. Like I freaking love Gunger. I actually have a funny story about them. We went to see David Crowder band on his church music tour, which wasn't my favorite David Crowder album. And this band that was opening was Gunger. I was like, what the heck is that? Like, it's a pretty bad band name. I mean, I guess it's their name, but whatever. Uh, and it was him, his wife, and this dude playing cello and beatboxing. I don't remember his name. Um, they freaking crushed it, dude. They immediately stole the show so much to the point where like I wasn't even excited to see David Crowder anymore. I just wanted to see more Gunger. And after that, I was definitely a mega fan. So they sold me big time on their live show. Like incredible performers.
Nice, nice. I think I'm trying to look up the name of the cellist because I know he plays with Switchfoot as well. Um, I'm
He's so
blanking.
cool.
I'm blanking on his name too right now. I know. I can't remember what his name is. We'll figure it out. We'll shout out to him next time because he is
Yeah.
really, really good and he plays with a lot of people.
Mhm.
Yeah, super, super talented guy.
You can actually find a lot of those when they were playing together on YouTube. They did a bunch of like radio shows and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool that
Nice.
that tour was pretty popular on YouTube. So I can
Yeah.
go back and remember.
That's awesome. One thing
Yeah.
I always like to say whenever I talk about Gunger, and people thankfully don't talk about this as much anymore, but one reason he was so controversial back in this like 2010 to 2012 era was that there was this huge faction of Christian music people that said that his music was too showy, that all he was doing was showing off and it wasn't actually worship music, and like I think it's just total nonsense. Like
That's
you
crazy.
can just hear his passion, and like the fact that someone is talented and wants to use that talent for praise does not mean that they're doing it for the wrong reasons, you know? And I
Dude,
think,
exactly.
yeah.
That's why Christian music on the radio is so bad because it
Mm,
all sounds the same.
yeah.
Like I want it to stand out. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think it take I like you said, I think if anything it adds uh using the talent that God gave to you to make incredible music should be praised, not frowned upon. So I hear
Totally
you.
agree. And it's such a modern idea. Like people have been writing praise music forever. You know, you can find like, you know, you go back to the 1500s, 1600s, and it's like Bach, one of my favorite composers, Johann Sebastian. It's like his music is so technical and requires so much talent to perform and to learn. And that doesn't, like, he was such a passionate Christian and dedicated so much of his life to the church and to praise. And it's like nobody mentioned that back then, you know. It's such a
Yeah,
modern idea of like, oh, you can't be good and praising at the same time. It's like, what are you talking about,
right.
man? It's like it's so weird.
There's there's just so many like instances of that. I don't want to get too off track, but I think of mute math a lot as well.
mm,
They got tied up in the whole like, are they Christians or not thing. Um, and that like kind of the same thing. Um, not really, but I think of them and I think of Switchfoot and basically like people that are Christians in bands are the best ones. Not necessarily like Christian bands, I guess.
yeah.
But yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
Talk
and
about
we've talked about it. We've talked about it before. There was that time period of like 96 to 2006 or whatever, where bands were given more autonomy and creativity was kind of praised.
Right.
But even in worship music, it wasn't super encouraged. It was always kind of the thing where it's like, yeah, if you're doing Christian music, it's fine to do some of that stuff, but if you're doing worship music, it's
Yeah.
not okay to do some of that stuff. And
No electric guitars.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Stuff like that.
Gunger was, it's crazy that this is 2010 and we're still talking about that, considering all the Christian music we've talked about in our podcast so far. But
Yeah.
yeah, just, and he's an interesting dude. If you followed any of some of his like theological journey over the past 4 or 5 years, like he says some really controversial things and has a lot of interesting opinions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you point to this music and say it's coming from a bad place or like his heart wasn't in it or something like that, it's like, that's crazy. It's like,
Yeah, totally agree.
ludicrous. Yeah.
There's a fruit fly in here. It's driving me freaking crazy. Sorry.
No, you're good, man. Let's take it over to, what are you on, number 2? Is that where we
Number
are?
2.
Yeah.
And I'll just say it now, as teased last week, my number 2 and number 1 are from the same band. And this is because it's a trilogy of concept albums. Last week I talked about or not last week, whenever it was, I talked about Hombre Lobo by Eels. And this is the one that came after that, End Times by Eels. Definitely probably top 5 Eels for me, which means the next one is too, obviously. But this album is super stripped, like as stripped as Eels has ever gotten. I'm pretty sure this is the one where he just took like a 4-track recorder, sat in his house and recorded this album. For the most part, it's just like guitar, bass, drums sometimes, and vocals, like super stripped, super mellow. Just like really, really some of his most beautiful songs, I think. And pretty cool lyrics too. It's kind of about like the end of the world, and like what people might be feeling during these times. But yeah, man, the fact that it's so like stripped kind of makes you connect to it on an emotional level. And I just love his songwriting. And you can tell he just puts a lot of a lot of like passion into his music. And the fact that this one is so low key and just like sounds like a guy in his room making music makes it really, really good. Yeah, but it's got some of my all-time favorites on it. Let's see what I put on the playlist here. Oh yeah, the first song, the beginning, just hits you with that pure raw emotion right out the gate. In my younger days, very, very similar in sound, End Times, just all great songs with a very similar feel to them. And this is a mellow album. I was talking about Gunger. This is, like you were saying, this is a mellow album that really works for me, start to finish. I think it's probably just because I'm such a big fan of the band, but I can just sit there and listen to the whole thing like no problem.
Nice.
And this is the one that kind of slips under the radar for them a lot. Kind of got lost in the mix, but yeah, 5 stars.
That's awesome, man. I mean, what a, like, I can't remember exactly when you got into Eels. Like, were you like by the time this album was coming out, were you into them at this point, or?
Let's see. I was in college. I think it was like my sophomore year. The first album I got by them when it came out wasn't until 2018. So I discovered them pretty late on. Beautiful Freak was the first album I bought by them because it was an Amazon add-on. It was like $4, so I could get free shipping. I was like, oh, I like that song. I like that song, My Beloved Monster, and I listened to it and just like blew me away. And next thing I knew, I had all, at that time, like 12 or 13 of their studio albums within like 2 months.
That's awesome. That's what's so, I know it's prolific artists like that. Like, I think we're both lucky in that you with Eels and me with Neil Morse, that our very favorite artists are so prolific, and it's like you might get 3 albums in a year, like, I just think that's amazing that they're able to be that creative and to have that high quality stuff coming at you. It's awesome. It's a real really
Right.
really great thing for a fan.
Yeah, and they mix it up enough to where it's not overkill. Like you're always excited to see what comes out next. And these three concept albums, they're all separate concepts. They're all super different, which is why I think they released them this way. They all have very different themes. Like Hombre Lomo was the rock and roll one, End Times was the mellow acoustic one, and I'll talk about the next one next. So
Nice.
yeah.
That's cool, man, too, because I know I may have mentioned this before because it annoys me. I don't know why it annoys you so much, but in progressive rock, sometimes if a band comes out with a concept album that is either popular or they like, they will do a sequel concept album. And it's like, how much are you gonna milk this? You know, like how much do I have to get invested in this and like blah blah blah. And I love concept albums, and it's really cool that he came up with that many different ideas and different styles and didn't just like drag one out too long or milk
Right.
it for
Yeah,
everything it's
exactly.
worth. Or yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Well, we got lots of different styles going on today. My next one,
Yeah.
keep the style train rolling. I've got Kaleidoscope Heart by Sarah Bareilles.
Nice.
This, I don't want to get too bold. It's probably the best pop music album, I think, since the 70s.
That's pretty
Like,
bold.
yeah, just like, I mean, she tends to fall into this like adult contemporary genre, I guess, but like she's on pop radio. She's a pop artist, and like the song craft of this music is absolutely unbelievable. Like what she's able to do with verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. It's just to like be as creative as possible and have these catchy melodies and meaningful lyrics. And in the bridge, she always provides like just enough chord interest to where like it really catches your ear and like refocuses you on the song, but it's not so much to where it's like, where is this coming from? What's going on? Like this album, I feel like you could like build a whole college degree in songwriting around this one record. And this is, sometimes like you remember the very first time you heard an artist, like you remember the first song you heard or the experience. This Sarah Bareilles is one that I remember that when my wife and I first got married, we were living at one of her professors' house because they were teaching abroad for a year, and they were like, will you stay at our house and watch our cats? And we were like, yeah, we don't have any money or furniture. That sounds perfect. So I remember being in the living room and working on, I was still in college at the time, and I was working on math homework. And in the other room, my wife was listening to the song Uncharted from this album. And I just remember hearing, she has this piano style that she plays with, Sarah Bareilles, where she like really bangs out these low octaves, just like boom, boom, down. And that was like kind of all I could hear, like being in the other room and like hearing that. And I was like, I like that. Like people don't usually bang on the piano like that. And I walked into the room and I was like, what are you listening to? And she like turned it up and we listened to the song, and I was like, that's really cool. And it's just one of those albums where the more I listen to it, like I'm just totally blown away. She's got some like old school, like Gonna Get Over You is almost like a 60s doo-wop style hit. She's got a little bit of gospel-y stuff, some straightforward pop. My favorite song on here is track 10. It's called Machine Gun. I put it on the playlist. I just think it's just like such an awesome song. I can just listen to it over and over again. I always say everybody's got a little bit of prog in them. Everybody's got a little bit of prog in them. And track 9, Let the Rain, she gets some timing changes going on in the chorus, and the drum beats going on in the background, hitting I can't remember, I'd counted out the timing in the past. I can't remember what it is now. It's something like 15 or 13 or something like that. Yeah, it's such a good album. I could just listen to it over and over again.
Yeah, between her and Spoon, there's a lot of piano banging going on in 2010.
Piano bang podcast.
Piano bang. I actually just saw something that she did recently with Weezer. I don't know if you saw it.
Mm-mm.
It's one of my favorite Weezer songs. If you're wondering, if I want you to, I want you
Oh
to.
yeah, it's a great song.
Yeah, she sang it with them, and they like alternated verses, and it just looked like they were all just so happy.
Nice.
I feel like she definitely gives off a happy feel for sure. So
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we saw her. Now I can't remember the name. The album that she came out with a couple years ago, I think it was 2018, 2019. We saw that tour. Me, my wife, and our sister went and saw her at the Red Hat Amphitheater in Raleigh. And she had such a great stage setup. She had cello, violin. She was playing piano, and there was also a keyboardist. I think three or four background vocals, and like it was just like this. And she like reworked a lot of her songs and did them in kind of different ways. And but like you said, just so happy the whole time.
yeah,
She was interacting with fans, and
that's cool.
yeah, it was a great show. Great show.
Dig it, man.
Yeah,
We're
dude.
all over the map,
I
yo.
know we really are.
All right, let's hop into the old number one, obviously by Eels. This was the last of the trilogy and is called Tomorrow Morning. One of my favorite Eels albums ever. This one was super experimental, just like totally all over the place. They had never done anything like this before.
Mm,
Um, a lot of computerized kind of stuff. Like the first song, well, there's an instrumental that goes into the first song called I'm a Hummingbird. It's just like these really like warm synthesizers, and E's got a vocal effect. Just like a really pretty song, just like with bare minimum, like one or two instruments. Really cool. And then Spectacular Girl was the big hit on this one. It's kind of a fun, like the whole album is kind of fun.
mm.
It's a very in a very positive light, which you don't hear from the band super often. So that kind of makes this one stand out in its own right. But yeah, man, like it's just one of those albums that's so good all the way through, and every track is so different from the last one.
Hmm.
It's just super interesting to listen to. I'm actually excited because I special ordered this one on vinyl from our local record store. I was asking the dude, I was like, man, I was like, I like Eels. I'm like, what do you have? And he it turns out they have like all of them.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, I got this one ordered and ready to come, man. I'm pretty psyched. But
Party.
yeah, but some of the best songs they've ever done, like That's Not Her Way, dude, that's like next level Eels right there.
Hmm.
Just such a good jam. And it's actually kind of I actually requested this song on the radio yesterday, The Man. Uh it's such a funny song. The whole song is just about how people are respecting him because he's the man. So like he like goes through a list of like different people who just tell him that he's awesome and tell him that he's the man. And it's just like about a guy walking down the street just like knowing he's awesome. It's hilarious.
That's
I'm trying
great.
to remember like some of the lyrics off the top of my head, but there's like one part where he just like people nod because it's understood. I'm the man. So there's a lot of like really funny, goofy stuff like that. But yeah, really cool songs, super experimental. But it definitely works. Um, yeah,
That's cool. Yeah,
top five Eels for me for sure.
nice. I was gonna say I haven't heard either of those. I'm excited to hear that some of the samples from the playlist. I sounds like he's got a real like yin and yang thing going on with the number two being like kind of the more stripped,
Right.
sadder, darker, and then this one being the little more upbeat.
Precisely. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's why it works so well. They play off of each other super well. Yeah, man, but it's fun to listen to.
nice.
Yeah.
Love it, bro. Love it.
Yeah,
Well, sweet.
man.
My number one album from 2010 is called "The Last Days of Leviathan" by Dirt Poor Robins. I talked about Dirt Poor Robins' first album was on an honorable mentions list a couple years ago, and this kind of gives an insight into sort of my weirdness as a music listener, I guess. This is kind of like their forgotten album. Like their first album, like there's a couple tracks on it that people just go nuts about. They still listen to. And then after this, they did this like 3-part musical thing, which people really, really liked. Um, and they had a concept album that they sort of released in EP form the past 2-3 years. And this is the one that kind of like people don't really listen to so much. Like I'm looking at the Spotify playlist, and it's like the most listened to song has like 141,000 plays. And I just think it's like a masterwork. I'm like, it's a tragedy that this is the one album that like people aren't listening to as much from these guys. um it is dark. It is a dark record, and that might be one of the reasons why people don't listen to it as much, because it's pretty much dark from top to bottom. It comes out of the gate. The first song is called "I Shot a Man," and it's almost like a like yeah, it's a very powerful song. I don't want to say anything about it in case you listen to it, and because it ends very, very powerfully. And then the second song is kind of it's called Alibi, and it's kind of like, I guess, like their thesis statement as musicians. It's kind of like about how awesome music used to be, and now music sucks. And they say like, I've got an alibi because you were with me on the night the music died. And then pretty much from like track 4 through 9, it's just like dark. Human After All, With Slander for a Blade, The Fall of an Aviatrix, but Nightingale. It's just like it's good stuff. It's really, really good. There's a song right in the middle, Leviathan, which is like really stands out from kind of everything before and after. It's I guess kind of proggy. I guess it's kind of like a really proggy little song in there. But yeah, man, I can't get enough of this one. This one's so good.
So you said the lyrics are kind of dark. Does the music match up with that? Does the
Yeah,
music kind of, yeah.
it's and they're kind of they have really interesting production. I've played their music for a lot of my friends, and some people like it and some people don't. And I think when people don't like it, a lot of times it has to do with their production, because it is thick and very effect laden. They do lots of effect heavy vocals, and just very wet sounds, very wet keyboards, guitar, lots of layers. So that can, it doesn't sound like a lot of other bands sound, so I think
Mhm.
that puts some people away. But I really like it. To me, it like adds such a uniqueness to their vibe of like, oh man, like this is that Dirt Poor Robin stank, or whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it. But it's heavy. It's a very heavy minor key. There are some moments of brightness throughout, like the very last song, "Tada," is kind of a funny, more upbeat. That Alibi song that I mentioned is a little more funny, upbeat. But yeah, there's some heaviness here, both musically and lyrically, for sure.
Nice. It's interesting that you mentioned like the number of streams on Spotify that you were talking about. I didn't realize you could even see that until last week, because I usually use Spotify on my phone.
Uh-huh.
I didn't realize when you're on the computer you can see how many plays there were.
Yeah.
Um, and I was ranking the Eels album because like you and I both like to rank stuff.
Uh-huh.
I've
Hence
been
the
trying to rank their
podcast.
albums. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
trying to rank their albums for a long time, and I was just curious like how many listens they had after seeing that. And the same thing happened to me, dude. Like the ones that I like the most have like, I don't know, less than 100,000 streams on every song.
Mm,
And then the ones that like I thought were okay have like a million.
yeah.
I don't get it. I think we're just
No.
odd. I think we like connect with artists on the level. Like I feel like the albums that people don't like are when the artists really do like what they want to do.
Mm.
And I don't know. I just always like I always feel like I'm connecting with the albums that people don't like the most, which is kind of like what you were saying.
Yeah, man. We should that should be our segment next time.
Yeah, that's a good
Our
idea.
upfront, because I totally agree. And this is gonna sound like I'm just the most pretentious person of all time, which in some ways I kind of am. But I feel like a lot of people don't interact with art the way that it's meant to be interacted with.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, like there's certain stuff where you feel like you can really connect with the artist and you almost feel their like passion coming through in the product, and that tends to turn a lot of people off, it seems like,
Yeah.
because maybe it's not quite as accessible to someone who is maybe not as plugged into that particular medium, whether it's music or whatever. But I think for people like you and I, like musicians who like, we write music and we're interested in lots of different genres and stuff, it's like we much more appreciate hearing an artist like totally go for it and be like, this is me, and here's all these layers and the goofy and the sad and the ups and the downs, and I think some people don't like that so much. I think yeah, a lot of people, I think, I guess, but
Yeah. I think we're just like total hipsters, dude.
that probably as well.
That happens to me with movies too. Like everybody likes the same movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody thought like The Hangover was like the funniest movie of all time. And like there's so many movies that people don't know about that are like way better.
Yeah. That's a really good example. Yeah.
I don't know. I think we just like to I don't know, not conform to the masses.
Yeah, I wonder if that's like our DNA, or if something happened to us, something like traumatic happened to us along the way, where
hate all things like popular. That's hilarious.
All right. Well, cool. Yeah, we'll spin that into a segment next time somehow.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, we'll
talking
figure it
about
out.
like artistry versus popularity, and
yeah, that'd be fun.
Where they intersect on the spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So for 2011, you got any teaser town for us?
Oh man, let's see. Haven't even thought about it. Oh no, I'm scrolled way down. Let's see. 2011. Okay, I've got some comedy. Ooh. I've got an instrumental jazz album, which I've never had on the podcast before. And I know that you and I have one shared album that's in the exact same slot, so that's pretty fun.
Really? Yeah. Which number is it?
Number 4. Our number 4s are the same.
Oh,
yeah.
I'll probably change it on you last minute.
What about you?
You sometimes.
You got some teasers?
Yeah, I've got a teaser for next week. I'm going super local. A band out of Boone, North Carolina is going to be making the top 5.
All right.
Yeah. So that'd be fun.
Excellent. Get psyched.
Yes.
Sweet. That's Radiohead, right?
Yeah. Dude, everybody knows. They secretly.
All right, sweet. So let's count down, recap our top 5s from 2010. So Brian, your top 5, you had number 5, Transference by Spoon. Number 4, Nightmare by Avenged Sevenfold. Number 3, American Ghetto by Portugal the Man. Number 2, End Times by Eels. And number 1, Tomorrow Morning by Eels as well. And then my top 5 here, we had number 5, Anti-Fogmatic by Punch Brothers. Number 4, Love is Here to Stay by Casey Shea. Number 3, Beautiful Things by Gunger. Number 2, Kaleidoscope Heart by Sarah Bareilles. And number 1, The Last Days of Leviathan by Dirt Poor Robins.
That was a eclectic list.
Yeah, it really was. That might have been the most eclectic episode we've ever had.
Heavy metal, pop, bluegrass, indie. Dude, it's like everything.
It really is. Well, couldn't have done much more. I guess we didn't get any hip hop in there this time, but you mentioned that the Portugal the Man had hip hop elements.
Yeah, that's true.
But
it's hip hop. That's hip hop for us.
Yeah.
For white boys like us.
For white boys from the mountains of North Carolina.
Yeah, American Ghetto, that's some good hip hop right there.
Yeah, those white kids from Alaska, that's the hip hop that we like. Awesome. I don't know. I was looking through my top 5s. I don't think I have any like straight up hip hop, but I will say that starting around 2015, in my opinion, there's been like an R&B revolution.
Huh.
There's been like some really, really awesome R&B music that's come out. One artist that I'm super psyched about, and it's really sad that he didn't make any of the countdowns because he puts out his music mostly in EPs, is Jacob Banks. Just phenomenal R&B artist that popped up onto the scene like 2014, 15, something like that. But there's some other artists I'm going to talk about. So I don't have any hip hop on my list, but
Yeah.
I definitely like that element a lot, especially the past like 5, 6 years or so. There's been some really good stuff.
I've got some hip hop a little bit more in the future. I mean, it's not really hip hop, kind of the same deal as Portugal the Man, but there's a little rap in there. So
There we go. There we
yeah,
go.
be mixing it up.
Well, good times, man. Well, if you were sad that there was a big gap between the last one and this one, we apologize. There will probably be a big gap between this one and the next one as well. I'm in the process of moving right now, and it's going to be a weird like move that's spread out over the course of like 4 weeks and driving back and forth. And but we'll sneak one in at some point
Yeah,
in
we'll
the near
figure it out.
future, and yeah, get another podcast rolling.
We're so busy.
Life sucks, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate you guys spending this time with us, and hopefully you remembered some great tunes you loved from 2010, and maybe you heard some that you never heard of before that you want to go check out and be like, man, these Blue Turnip guys, they know what they're talking about. I should go check out their music as well.
Yeah. That's the goal.
All right, Brian. Well, great as always, and we'll sign it off.
Later.